Hello friends, today we will discuss about Karl Marx, one of the most significant thinkers, but at the same time a very controversial thinker. And again, many times he is misunderstood. So we'll discuss about Karl Marx. Karl Marx is one of those 6 thinkers which has been explicitly mentioned in our syllabus. The ideas of Karl Marx have contributed a lot to the study of society. The ideas of Karl Marx introduced a new approach to understand society, the conflict approach. But again, the way Karl Marx has written things, sometimes they are controversial and sometimes they are subject to multiple interpretations. He has written a lot, whatever his writings are voluminous. And again, he has not given much importance to precision. Sometimes you will find inconsistency in his writings. This also leads to multiple interpretations. But one thing we should keep in mind is, he was never writing to create a science of society. Influenced, or he was more motivated by revolutionary ideas. He wanted to create a just and human society. That was his main aim. So because of this, you will find differences at some points, and that is the reason this becomes controversial. But later day sociologists, what they have tried to find out the ideas which are sociologically significant from his writings. So we will be studying some of these ideas in today's session. And we will try to look at Karl Marx from all angles. We will try to have a holistic approach to understand all his principles. And we will look at what Karl Marx talks about. We'll also look at some of the criticisms to that. And just like any other thinker, we'll also first look at their background, what is the perspective, what is their worldview, what methodology they're talking about, and then what are some of the important contributions of those thinkers. So again, for Marx also we'll do the same thing. So we'll understand his background, we'll understand his perspective, his methodology, then we will shift to the key things which are specifically mentioned in the syllabus and which are his main contributions. 4 main things: historical materialism, mode of production, and both these things actually constitute his perspective as well as methodology. Then we'll discuss class struggle, and then the last thing, alienation. So we will be covering all these things in today's session. So we'll start with his background. Now, Karl Marx was born in 1818 in Germany. He was born to a Jewish family. At this point of time in Germany, there was a lot of discrimination against the Jews. His father was a lawyer, he had a legal practice. But since he was a Jew, it was very difficult for him to find a job, a public job. And again, private practice also was difficult because there was this discrimination. They were dependent on the dowry that his mother had got when she got married. And later on, what is happening, his father, he's realizing that it is very difficult to sustain. With this, he's getting converted into Protestantism. Now, as he's getting converted into Protestantism, their life chances are definitely improving. So this is also impacting Marx to some extent. How getting converted from Jew to Protestant is impacting them. Now, Marx, he is sent to study now, sent to law school, University of Bonn. He's supposed to study law over there. But he was not that much interested in law. He was rather interested in philosophy. And here in this institution, he's not giving much importance to academics. He was not a very good student. And he's primarily focusing on other things. He takes heavily to drinking. He was also caught with possession of weapons. So he was called back. He had to return. Within 1 year of his return to home, he's getting engaged to his childhood girlfriend. And his father is not informed about all these things. So without the knowledge of his father, he's getting engaged at that point of time to his childhood girlfriend. Now, next thing here is, see, at this point of time, Karl Marx is penniless. He does not have any money, nothing. Only thing that he has is a very high opinion about himself. He considers himself with great respect. Okay? The self-esteem and all these things is there. Now he plans to pursue his studies further, and he gets enrolled in University of Berlin. Now in University of Berlin, Hegel, his ideas were extremely prominent. There was a group, young Hegels. These were the people who were influenced by the ideas, the thoughts of Hegel. But again, they were also critical of Hegel. So they used to question their masters as well. The theories, the philosophy of Hegel, that was also being questioned. Marx was part of that. Marx was also part of another group, that is the Doctors Club. Now, at this point of time, Hegel was also not looked at with a lot of respect in different circles. There was some disrespect over there. Now, what is happening here is, since he's part of this Doctors Club is blacklisted for employment in many organizations. So it is very difficult for him to get jobs as an academic. So he's taking the job of a journalist in a newspaper. So he's an editor in a newspaper. So that is how he's taking up his first job now. Now, in this process, during this time, he's meeting a person, Friedrich Engels. So Friedrich Engels becomes his friend for lifetime. Now, Friedrich Engels, he's the son of a wealthy businessman. They have a lot of businesses. Now, but this guy, he's concerned about the working condition of laborers, and he wants to improve that. So Friedrich Engels and Marx, they have similar kind of concerns, and they are becoming friends. Engels, though they are friends, Friedrich Engels, he always respects Marx. He always feels that Marx was intellectually much superior than him. So that he has always mentioned. And many times, many of the works of Karl Marx has also been written by Engels, or it has been translated by Engels. Both are having similar concerns, but both were also different. Marx is not coming from a rich background, Engels is coming from a rich background. The way Marx used to carry himself never gave importance to the way he dresses, but Engels maintained all these things. So they were different people, but they are becoming close friends. Now, as part of his work now, Marx, he's an editor with a publication. Now he's writing an article which is extremely critical of Russia. At this point of time, Russia and Germany, they were close allies. So since he's writing an article which is extremely critical of Russia, the newspaper had to be shut down. And now, because of all these things, he had to escape to Paris. But Germany is now asking France to expel Marx. So that is also there. So because of this, he now has to move to, he has to take exile, he has to move to Belgium. And he's staying there in Belgium from there he's writing, staying there for 3 years. And at this point of time, his father is also dying. So whatever property his father had, that Marx is inheriting, and he's getting some money in this process. But again, what Marx does is, he uses that money to fund Belgian revolutionaries. That is what he's doing with his, the inheritance that he gets. In 1847, in London, there is this formation of Communist League. So again, here Marx and Engels, both of them are invited. Marx is also writing the Communist Manifesto at this point of time. He's also moving to Germany now. He's working for a newspaper now. But again, in this newspaper, he calls the emperor of the Germany of that point of time as a royal terrorist. So if you're calling the emperor as a royal terrorist, there is bound to be repercussions. So again, he has to move out. Now he's moving to England, London. And London becomes his home for lifetime now. London had stability at that point of time. Other countries in Europe were not stable, but London had a very stable government. It had stability. So since London had stability, they were also not afraid of the revolutionary ideas of Marx, like other countries are afraid of. So he's settling down in London right now. So he's moving to London and staying over there. But again, here also he does not have a lot of money. He does not, in fact, he's penniless. He does not have money. He's staying in those areas where workers used to stay. Though he's intellectually superior, but he's not having money. And many times he's not able to afford food for his family. In fact, 3 of his children died because he could not afford them basic amenities like medicine. And as a consequence, his wife, his girlfriend to whom he had married, childhood girlfriend who he had married, who is his wife right now, Jenny, she also leaves him. But all these things, poverty and all these other challenges, is never impacting his academic pursuits. He keeps on studying. In fact, he used to study those blue books. Blue books were huge books, voluminous books. These books were meant for the members of parliament at that point of time. These books had data about the workers. So, member of parliament, they themselves not read these books, but Marx is reading that. And these books are the source from which where he's getting the data for his writings. During this time, he's having an illegitimate child with his maidservant. And meanwhile, Jenny decides to return to him. So now there was this dilemma. He has an illegitimate child with his maid, and also Jenny's returning. So finally, what happens? Angels accepts that it is his illegitimate child. So that way they had resolved it. And Angels, in the meanwhile, he is getting the ownership of the property of his father. He's selling some of his property, and then they're setting a corpus to fund the family of Marx, because Marx never had money. Then he's taking up the role of a journalist with the New York Tribune, and then he's spending 20 years in writing Das Kapital. And this Das Kapital comes out in 1867. And this Das Kapital, it had brisk sales in different countries, Russia, Germany. They had brisk sales, and he's becoming part of International Working Men's Association. He has very good relationship with many trade unions. Different working class leaders used to ask him for ideas. They used to ask him to come to different events. And then he's trying to write the second and third volumes. And while he's sitting and writing, he dies. The second and third volume get published with the help of Engels later on. He's the one who is publishing all these things. So this way, Marx dies while writing itself. So this is a brief background of Marx. Now we will look at his perspective and his methodology. So what is the perspective of Marx? What is the worldview of Marx? So we'll first see that. And just keep this in mind, that his perspective, his methodology, again, you will find it in historical materialism that we'll discuss separately, and also in mode of production. That is again something we will discuss one more time. We'll specifically discuss that. So there might be some repetition, or what you can possibly do is, whatever we're studying now as perspective, try to relate it at that point of time. So what is the perspective? Now he's saying, the world, the physical world that we stay in, it is characterized by change. There's always this element of flux, and the world is constantly changing. Even as we are talking now, some change is going on. It is continuously changing, and it is evolving. But this change is not random. It is not in a haphazard manner. There is some uniformity, there is some regularity. And since there is some uniformity and regularity, we can find out some patterns, how this change will take place. So there will be some pattern. There is change, but change is not haphazard. There will be some pattern with the help of which you can find out how the change will progress. But he's saying this pattern of change is rooted in the economic order. Matter, economics, they decide how this change will be shaped. So pattern of change can be found in man's relationship with the economic order. Then he's saying society can be viewed as an interrelated system of parts. So there are multiple parts in the society. But one more thing he's saying, not just there are multiple parts in the society. He's saying economy influences all the other parts. Society has multiple parts, but economy again plays a very important role. It influences other parts of the society. Economy is also part of it. Man in the society is shaped by social institutions. For example, religious institutions, they can shape you. Political institutions, they can shape you. They put some force on you, so you have to behave in a particular manner. So social institutions, they impact man's attitude and behavior. Then another perspective, another assumption by Marx is, man is essentially a rational being. He's rational, he thinks for himself. He is intelligent, he is sensitive. In most of the cases, man will be like this. But there can be scenarios in which this will not work. There can be a scenario in which the structure can be such, the social structures can be such, that man might exploit someone. So in that case, there can be conflicts. So most of the cases, he's rational, he's intelligent, he's sensitive, but sometimes it can be reversed, it can be opposite. He can exploit someone. So someone might be deprived, someone is privileged. The privileged might exploit someone. So this is the worldview of Marx. Change is there. But again, this change does not happen in a haphazard manner. There can be some patterns over there. The pattern of change is determined by man's relation with the economic order. Society is a system of interdependent parts, and these parts are influenced by the economy. Man is influenced by social institutions. Social institutions influences attitude and behavior. Man is rational, sensitive, intelligent, but there can be times in which there can be conflicts. One can exploit another. The social structures might be such. So this is the assumptions, this is the worldview of Marx. Perspective of Marx. Now, what is the methodology that is used by Marx to study? Now, Marx is saying that social reality is an external reality. It has its own independent existence. It exists outside. So if the social reality is real, can have its own independent existence, that means it is also amenable to sensory observation. You can study all those things by positive sciences methods. So social reality is amenable to sensory observations, and positive science methods can also be used. But he's saying empiricism is not adequate. We also have to use some interpretation. We are talking about human behavior. There can be some volition here. Sometimes people might give or people might interpret things in a subjective manner. So only positive sciences methods might not be adequate. We also need to have some interpretation. Next thing he's saying is, again from his perspective, change is the characteristic of human society. Human society involves change, it involves flux. But this change takes place in an ordered fashion. You can find out some patterns over there. So we can find out laws which are governing change, because change happens in an ordered manner. So laws governing change can be discovered. Then he's saying change in the relations of production and the superstructure is normally preceded by conflict. The relationship of production, superstructure, these might be new words for you. Just wait for a few moments, you will understand it. What you keep in mind is conflict is also part and parcel of society. Conflicts happen within society. And we'll understand what are relations of production, what is superstructure in a few moments. And what he's saying, these conflicts, these changes, they can be explained in the light of the forces operating in the economic structure. What he indirectly means to say is, if the economic structure changes, if the economic forces in the society changes, there can be change, there can be conflict. So what indirectly he's saying is, matter is determining all these things. What are economic forces? How you are creating, how you are producing matter. So matter is leading to change in matter, change in economic forces leads to conflicts in society. So at the base is matter, at the base is economics. So economics is the most important factor. And we will again see this as we proceed. You will have greater clarity when we understand historical materialism. We also talk about mode of production. All these things will become more clear. And he's saying man's thinking and attitudes, they get influenced by the nature of society. Society influences you. So it is very difficult to study society in a detached manner. Man is impacted by society. A social researcher is also impacted by society. So if a social researcher is trying to understand society, he also will have some bias. So it is very difficult to understand society in a very dispassionate manner, detached manner. But he feels some people can do it. And he thinks he is one of those individuals who has that capacity to look at society in a dispassionate manner. So This is what Marx talks about the methodology to understand society. You can use positive sciences method, but we also need interpretation. Positive sciences method are not sufficient. You can find out laws which can tell you how change will happen. Change happens in an ordered manner. We can discover some patterns there. Then there is conflict in society, and why these conflicts happen, we will discover that in a few moments. Also, conflicts and change, they are rooted in the economic structure of the society. Economics is the most important thing. Matter is the most important thing for Marx. And for studying society, you have to be a little dispassionate. You get every individual is part of the society. They can get influenced. You need to be dispassionate about it. Then only you will have a neutral viewpoint. And Marx feels he can do it. He's one of those gifted individuals who can take this up. So this is the methodology given by Marx. So we'll start with some of his important discoveries or some of his important findings, some of his important theories. So first we will talk about historical materialism. So we'll start with historical materialism. I just want you to read this particular paragraph before we proceed. It's okay if you don't understand it at this point of time. We'll again come back to it in a while. Historical materialism designates the view of the course of history. It's a view. It seeks the ultimate cause and the great moving power of all important historic events in the economic development of the society, in the changes in the mode of production and exchange, with the consequent division of society into distinct classes and the struggle of these classes. This is what he means by historical materialism. This is one entire sentence is a paragraph here. Don't worry, we will come back at this point of, and again, we'll discuss the concept, and when we come back to this, you'll be able to have a better clarity. But before we study historical materialism, we'll look at a couple of concepts. We'll understand what is dialectics, we'll understand what is materialism, we'll also understand what is idealism. These 2-3 things we'll understand, and then we will understand what is historical materialism. So we'll do that first. So first thing, we'll understand what is dialectics. See, dialectics is a very old methodology, and it is used to discover truth. And how do we find out truth? Through contradictions. There is clash of ideas, and in this process, you will find out truth. This process is called dialectics. Now, how this process pans out, we'll see that. So in this particular thing, Hegel talks about, he calls it the dialectical triad. It is the trilogy of 3 things. Trilogy means 3 things. It's a trilogy of thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. And it is said that progress or growth takes place through a dialectic process. Now, how this process pans out? So it is said that truth, it remains forever. Truth is permanent. False things, they can get removed over a period of time. Now, someone gives a thesis. I present some ideas. In that, there will be some truth, there can be some falsehood as well. So thesis is presented. Some truthfulness, some elements of truth, some falsehood might be there. Now, this is now exposed to contradictory ideas, antithesis. So in this process, what will happen is, whatever false elements was there in thesis will be exposed. At the same time, these antithesis might also have false ideas. So that also gets exposed. There is a contradiction, there is opposition, there is a conflict between both these things. So what survives now is just the truth. And this takes the form of synthesis. So thesis and antithesis, they are getting exposed to one another. False elements are removed. What remains is truth. That is the synthesis. But again, from synthesis, there can be formation of one more thesis. And again, there will be some contradiction by another antithesis. Again, they will combine together, or there will be this opposition. And what will remain in the end is, again, truth, synthesis. This process will be happening again and again. This process keeps on happening. And finally, one stage will come where there will be no false elements. Only truth will remain. There will be no contradiction. So there will be no scope of any further growth. So the dialectical process will come to an end. And we are arriving at perfect truth. So this process is called dialectical process. Thesis, antithesis, synthesis. Ideas, contradiction to those ideas, and then formation of something new. So this process is referred to as dialectics. And this is the process by which you can discover truth. So keep this in mind. What is dialectics? And Hegel, he talks about these dialectics can be in the form of ideas, only in terms of ideas. It can also be used in terms of matter. That is what Marx talks about, dialectical materialism. But before that, what we'll do, we'll understand what is materialism. So before we understand materialism, what we will do is, we'll understand what is idealism. And then we can understand materialism in a better manner. Now, Hegel, he talked about idealism. He was saying ideas are most important. Ideas shape everything. He's saying idea shapes matter. It is the idea which ultimately matters. That is what he talks about. So in a society, the base of the society is ideas. This base will decide other institutions. So at the root is the idea. But Marx differs here. Marx says idea is not the root. He feels it is a matter which is the root. So how this is the case, we'll see. Now, Marx in this theory has been influenced by the French school of materialism, Ludwig Feuerbach, one of the most prominent materialistic thinkers. So he has been influenced by him. And Marx says the ultimate reality is matter, not the idea. Matter existed long back. Idea is coming later on. It is a matter which decides the being. So matter always existed. We came later, ideas came later. So it is the reality. Matter is the actual reality. So idea is the reflection of matter. Idea is the reflection of matter, not the opposite. Hegel said matter is the reflection of idea. But he is differing here. And Marx quotes this thing. He uses these terms. Hegel's dialectics was standing on its head. I have put it on its feet. So idea was at the base. It was standing there. Now he has reversed it. Matter was above. Now matter is down. Complete reversal has happened. Now what do we mean by this? How matter is at the base? So according to Marx, it is the economic forces, the material forces, which form the base of the society. This is the base. The base is the matter, the economic forces. Other things, other institutions, they are in the superstructure. Institutions like legal authorities, legal institutions, political institutions, religious institutions, institutions, all they are part of the superstructure. And they are decided by the base. What he's saying is, see these institutions that you see here, they influence the idea, but they are actually getting influenced by the base. So idea is the reflection of material forces. The base or the substructure consists of forces of production and the relations of production. Forces of production means the technology, the knowledge that you need to produce something. Man is different from any other animal in the sense that it can enter into productions. It can enter into social relations for production. So the technology that you are using, the knowledge that you are using, that is the force of production, how you will produce. For example, land, machinery. These are all technology. They are all forces of production. But when you have to enter into production, you have to also enter into certain relations. For example, capitalists, and the workers, they have to come together. Capitalists will have the money, will own the machinery, and the workers work over there. So there is a relationship over there between the capitalist and the worker. This relationship is the relations of production. So the technology and the relations of production, they form the economic structure of the society. They form the base of the society, this area of the society, this thing. This is the base of the society. Whenever there is any change in the force of production, there is also a corresponding change in the relationship of production. Forces of production, they correspond to the relationship of production. If the forces of the technology changes, the relationship between production can also change. For example, at present, we are having these capitalist mode. Capitalist owners, they are linked together in a particular, capitalists and the workers, they are linked together in a particular manner. But in case the technology changes, this relationship can also vary over a period of time. And if they are varying, again, the superstructure can also vary. The religious ideas, the political ideas, all these things can also vary with the variation in the base. So this is what he says. His idea of materialism is this. It is the matter which shapes your ideas. Ideas are part of the superstructure. Matter is a part of the base. Ideas get influenced by matter. So idealism is different from materialism in this aspect. Whether the ideas shape matter or whether matter shape ideas is the question here. So this is materialism. Now, what is the meaning of historical materialism? Historical materialism, this particular term, was not used by Marx himself. Others, Platonoff, Engels, they used the term historical materialism. Marx used to talk about materialistic interpretation of history. How we can interpret history through the evolution of these material forces. So materialistic interpretation of history is what Marx referred to. So historical materialism is the application of dialectical materialism in interpreting history. That is what historical materialism means. See, we can study history, we can divide history into multiple stages. This can be in multiple manners. But now, if you are dividing history in different stages as per these dialectic processes, then it is historical materialism. So it is the way of understanding history, how our society has evolved over time. So historical materialism is nothing but a way by which you are interpreting history. And in this interpretation, these things are used. And according to this method, the society is divided into these 4 stages. The first stage is the stage of primitive communism, then slavery system, then feudalism, and then capitalism. This is how we interpret history through the dialectical materialistic processes. We'll understand all these processes, and this understanding will help you understand how the superstructure is getting influenced by the substructure, the base, the mode of production. Now, the first stage in history is the stage of primitive communism. During this stage, there was no property. The concept of property is not there. So it is a stage which is propertyless, which is exploitationless, which is classless, which is stateless. How all these things are actually happening? During this stage, the technology was not that advanced. If technology is not that advanced, production will also not be very high. What kind of technology we are having? Stone was used for hunting. Fishing net hooks, they were used for fishing. So technology is not that productive. As a result of which, the production was not that much. So as the production is limited, it is primarily focusing on self-consumption. If it is only for your own self, so what is happening here? You're not having any surplus. If there is no surplus, again, no one is going to appropriate anything extra. You are just ensuring your own subsistence. So surplus is not there. So there is no private property. There is no exploitation. There is no class struggle. There is no class division. There is no class struggle. And since there is no private property here, there is also no concept of state. According to Marx, state is nothing but an institution which protects private property. So since there is no concept of private property, so there is no requirement for any institution like state. So since all these things are not there, so there will not be any exploitation. So this kind of society is a communist society. Everything is communally owned. The means of production are owned by the community itself. This society, in this again, life might be difficult, but it did not have any exploitation, it did not have any conflict, it did not have any struggle. Everything is owned jointly. Technology is primitive, but no surplus production, no formation of classes. Only if there is surplus production, someone will appropriate more, someone will appropriate less, there will be division, there will be classes. This is not happening here. But gradually what is happening? Technology is something which is not static, it evolves, it improves over a period of time. So technology will evolve. Now if technology is improving, production will also improve. So there will be surplus production. Now if there is surplus production, some people will take more, some people will take less. Now who is taking more, who is taking less, again it will depend on who has access to power, maybe military power. So because of this surplus, now some people who have access to more, they would want to protect it. So this is now their private property. So now there is private ownership of property, private ownership of means of production. And now the society is getting divided. Ownership class and propertyless class. Some have access to excess, some have access to less. So some are accessing property, some are not accessing property. Those who are having property, they are the property class. Those who do not have property, they are the propertyless class. The property owning class will now exploit the class which is deprived of property. Now, because of which class division starts emerging, it will lead to exploitation, it will lead to class struggle. But the dominant class will try to protect its own interest. They will not want to give away their own property. So they will have to create institutions which can protect it. So they will create the institution of state. State is nothing but an institution which will protect the interest of those who have created it. So state will basically protect the interest of its creators. So state will protect the interest of the property class. So in primitive communism, since you are not having surplus, you are not having private property, you do not have any class struggle, class exploitation, there is no concept of state. But from now onwards, the concept of state will gradually emerge. The next society that you see in this process is the ancient society. In this society, there is division between masters and slaves. The slaves are owned by the masters. The masters are the haves, slaves are the have-nots. The slave, they carry out all the production work. The masters, they live on the labor of the slaves. Masters exploit the slaves. And the state has to serve the interest of the master class. So the legal institutions that will be there at this point of time, they will protect the masters. Slavery will be legal. Slaves will not be given any human rights. They will not be having any fundamental rights. And there will be mechanisms by which masters can buy and purchase slaves. They can procure slaves from outside. So what is happening here? The state is nothing but the part of the superstructure. It is the economic relation here. This division of society between master and slaves. This is the relationship of production. That is part of the economic structure. That is part of the base. This base has these relations of production. But the superstructure, this is the superstructure. This will have these legal institutions. That will basically be created by this base. The state will be created by the masters. And once this legal structure has been created, it will justify the base. So state will protect the base. That is this economic structure. Similarly now, the next phase, feudalism. In this, the society is again having a feudal mode of production. There are two classes, the feudal lords and the peasants. The feudal lords, they will own the means of production. The land will be owned by the feudal lords. The peasants, they have to carry out the production work. The feudal lords, they're not carrying out any production work, but they get the benefit of the labor of the serfs, the peasants. So basically, the feudal lords are kind of parasites. They thrive on the labor of the peasants. The feudal lords will exploit the peasants can resist. But if they're resisting, there will be ruthless control of that resistance. The state will strike back. The state has been formed by the feudal lords. State protects the interest of the feudal lords. So in this society also, you can observe the base, the relationship of production. What is the relation? This relationship between the feudal lords and the serf. So this is the base, the relationship of production. But this relationship of production is also justified by other means. It will be justified by the legal institutions like state. The state will crush the resistance. The state comes here. The state has been created by these base, and the state will help survival of the base. So the lords here are the dominant class, the feudal lords. Peasants are the class which are exploited. So peasants are the dependent and the exploited class. So you can understand how the relationship of production, which again correspond to the forces of production, technology of production at that point of time, they create these institutions, and how once these institutions come into place, they will justify the existing structure. Next society is the capitalist society. In this society, the society gets divided into two parts: the bourgeois and the proletariat. The bourgeois owns the means of production. Proletariat, they are the ones who have to carry out production. Proletariat means the working class. Bourgeois means the capitalist. So capitalists, they own the factories, they will own the machineries, they will own the land. But the workers, they have to work in this land. Okay, so that way there is this difference here. So the workers, they have to sell their labor. But the amount of money that they get in return for the labor is very less. And again, these wages are kept very low. If the wages are kept very low, what will happen? Only you will meet the subsistence needs. You will not be able to invest for the future. You will not be able to save. So the workers will remain poor. So if the workers are remaining poor, again, they have to work tomorrow. So they have to continuously work so as to ensure their subsistence. So this ensures an uninterrupted supply of labor. So workers will be continuously working here. And the production, whatever is there, it is only for profit. They are not getting a huge share of the profit. So as a consequence, over a period of time, what will happen is the share of profit that worker gets, it declines. They get poorer over a period of time. The condition of laborers, it deteriorates over a period of time. And they are just pushed to the brink. They're pushed to the periphery. They're pushed to such a situation now that they are just, they will not have any other option. The only thing that exists is the chains. They are tied with the chains. They have nothing to lose. They are pushed to the brim. They have nothing to lose but the chains with which they have been tied. So only thing they can do now is break these chains, free themselves from these shackles. And if they are breaking these chains, it will lead to a proletariat revolution. The workers, they are gradually becoming poorer. They are gradually becoming pushed to the periphery. They are not getting benefit of the work that they are doing. Only the way by which they can come out of it is through a proletariat revolution, a revolution of the workers of the world unite. This way, they can change the existing structures of the society, and they can now create a society in which there will be no class structure. There will be a society of the workers. They are the ones who will own the means of production. It is not the capitalists, it is the workers who will own the means of production. They will produce as per their requirements. They will contribute as per the capacity to give, and they will take as per their requirements. So that society will be a truly classless society, truly a communist society. So capitalism will eventually give way to communism through a proletariat revolution. That is what Marx says. But in this capitalist society also, just keep in mind, there is this base, the superstructure, which is decided by these mode of production, which is determined by the relationship of production. The what is the relationship between the capitalist and the proletariat. But in this society, there are inherent contradictions, and these inherent contradictions might lead to proletariat revolution. So this dialectical process that was unfolding till now, with the conflict between the different classes, will come to an end by the formation of a communist society. So this is how things are going to get shaped over a period of time. This is how Marx has interpreted history. From primitive communist society, in which everything is communally owned, where there is no class struggle, there is no class division, where there is no state, to ancient society, slave society, where the class society is divided among two classes, master and slaves. Class conflict is there, but state is trying to preserve the interest of the upper classes. The class which has created it, the superstructure, is the state. Then how it is moving towards feudalism and how it is moving towards capitalism. But within capitalism, there will be some inherent contradictions at the end, because proletariat, the workers have been, one class has been thrown to the brim. They do not have any other option but to fight, to remove the chains which has tied them. They will unshackle these chains. And this can lead to proletariat revolution, and it can lead to a classless society, and these processes will come to an end. So that is communism. That is a communist society. So this is how you can interpret history, materialistic interpretation of history. Now we'll just revert back to what we had seen. So now you can read it again. I hope you will have a better understanding of the same paragraph that we had studied a moment back. Historical materialism designates that view of the course of history. It is a view, it is a way of interpreting the course of history. It seeks the ultimate cause and great moving power of all important historical events. How historic events are happening. What are the causes of these events? How historic events are shaped up. It finds out these causes in the economic development of society. So society, the changes in the society, the base of the society is rooted in the economic development. Economic structure, it changes everything. How these modes of production and exchange, they are changing. It is impacting the economic development. It is indirectly impacting the economic events. And in this process, how the society has got divided into the classes and how there are struggles between these classes. So the entire paragraph that he talks about, it actually sums up the entire theory. What is the dialectic process? What is materialism? And again, how history has been shaped up through this process. Okay. So this is about historical materialism. I would suggest, please try to answer some questions related to historical materialism. So when you try to answer a question, you will think more about it and you will get even a better clarity. So this is about historical materialism, and this is about something about the background of Marx, perspective and his methodology. And after this, we will study mode of production. It will even make your understanding clearer. Thank you.